Financial leadership is changing. CFOs no longer record history. They make history. This podcast will help you become a better leader, strategic thinker, and digital visionary. Welcome to Secrets of Rockstar CFOs, the ultimate podcast for chief financial officers. Follow along as Jack McCullough engages in exciting chats with accomplished CFOs, learning how they overcame obstacles and positioned their companies for the future. Here's your host, Jack McCullough.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs. My name's Jack McCullough. I'm your host, and you can follow us online at rockstarcfos.com. Let's rock. Really excited by our guest today, Kathy Wagner from Kaseya. Kathy, welcome to the Secrets of Rockstar CFOs.
Thanks. Great to be here.
No, been looking forward to it, and we had some scheduling issues, so I'm glad we were able to put this together. But Kathy, for the 2 or 3% of my listeners who might not be familiar with your company, can you give us the 10,000-foot view of Kaseya?
Absolutely. So Kaseya has a platform called IT Complete. And what that means is that we have a purpose-built platform to service our customers, which are typically MSPs and the IT professionals that service small businesses internally. So our whole premise is that for those what we call multi-function IT pros, we have a full kit to allow them to service businesses in the communities as well as businesses they may work for directly. So what does that mean? It means that like perhaps you're a small dental office, or maybe you have 1 or 2 dental offices and you don't have the ability to keep an IT professional on staff full time. However, like any business nowadays, it's becoming more and more essential to your business to have IT applications, connectivity, online services, like making appointments and things like that. So our customers are the guys that those small businesses outsource their IT needs to. Or alternatively, if it's a small business that actually has 1 to 2 or maybe 3 people that do IT internally, our kit is purpose built for those types of people that are doing what we call the multifunction IT pro role. So like if you work at Citibank, they might have 100 people that just do backup and another 100 people who just do email. Well, our customers are the guys that have to switch between, resetting a password for maybe a hygienist who can't get into our app, backing up something if the system went down, and, taking care of the security needs, through email security of, all of the small businesses in the country and around the world.
Well, you certainly are impacting a whole lot of the business community with that business model. So great. But and we'll definitely return to that later. But I want to get a little background on yourself. So can you tell us, where did you grow up?
Yeah, I was born and raised in the great state of New Jersey.
Oh, okay. And you're in Florida now, though, right?
Yes, I moved to Florida in 1996. So I've spent about half my life in New Jersey and the other half in Florida.
Okay. So when you were a kid, if I can ask, what was your first job?
Yeah, so my very first job, I was a bingo waitress at my Catholic school that I went to. And basically, everybody volunteered as part of the school. And my dad used to work bingo. Like he used to hand out the cards and sell stampers and chips and all of that. And my dad was a firm believer that young people should work. So he would bring me there, and my job would be to walk up and down the aisles and bring coffee and snacks to the bingo players so they didn't have to get up while they were playing their game.
Okay. Well, that's a first, a bingo waitress. So
yeah, I started, I think I was only 7 or 8 years old when I started.
Oh my, yeah. That was legal in New Jersey at that time, I guess.
It wasn't for pay. If you brought somebody a cup of coffee, they might give you a 10-cent tip or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So cool. And then I know you went to college at Florida Atlantic University, and you studied accounting. And then, as I understand it, you immediately got your MBA as well. And what was at a young age that was intriguing to Kathy Wagner about accounting and business? Yeah,
so actually, I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay. Wow.
So when I started college, I was thinking of being pre-law, but I went into like, I guess, like the basic business, I guess, track. So the very first year, I took an accounting class and I was talking to the teacher and I was doing very well in it. And she was like, "Oh, did you ever think about being a CPA?" And I was like, "Well, no, I want to be a lawyer." And she was like, "Well, do you know there's like one lawyer for every 7 people in the state and you're not going to be able to get a job. And there's this big shortage of CPAs." So I listened to her and I, went and researched it later and she was right. So I decided to take a closer look at it because, of course, coming from poorer family with a strong work ethic, I was like, oh my God, I have to be able to get a good job after this, right? I have to make money. So I actually wound up becoming a CPA.
Well, good for you. Yes, you worked at Arthur Andersen and then Ernst and Young, and before starting in a corporate role. But what were the sort of the big things that you learned in public accounting that set you up well for your first job, which was at Citrix?
Yeah, so I think I think the face of public accounting has changed a lot post Sarbanes-Oxley. So let me just start by saying that I think that the folks that came up when I came up pre Sarbanes-Oxley actually got a much better learning experience in the public accounting arena. I think now because of all the new rules, like there's a lot less the public accountants can do, which I think has slowed the learning somewhat. So when I was starting out, number one, you learned work ethic. I mean, you learned how to dress up for a job and, be cordial with your customers and act professionally. I mean, the firms were really good back in those days of teaching those skills. And then, the other thing we learned how to do a lot of the things because back in those days, you were allowed to do for your customers. I remember like getting the 10K from this one client, and it was literally last year's 10K with a bunch of Post-its. And I'd pull out my giant computer and, start typing footnotes. And we were able to write technical memos and, really like research issues. As well as, the nuts and bolts of, how a bank rec worked and things like that. So, my experience in public accounting was very good and learned a whole lot to prepare myself for my first role at Citrix, which was like the assistant corporate controller, where I actually was in charge of like writing the SEC filings, writing the MD&As, the press releases, as well as handling all the complex accounting and those types of items. So I felt very prepared for that coming out of public accounting.
Okay, it's interesting because you described there were things, and I was in public accounting in the 1980s, and then my first job, I was the controller for a company, and the things that you described right now, they're considered an independence problem that you can't do that for your client. But there was a time that was just actually considered like really good customer service. Like, there were some like complex footnotes that I had as a controller. I just didn't have the qualifications to write a global tax footnote, for example. And nor did I have the time or inclination to learn how to do it. So it was Anderson, and they did it for us. But no one said that they're doing that was an independence issue. We just, that just wasn't even on our mind. We were just all trying to work collaboratively to get the numbers right. So it's a very much a different game. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's exactly what my experience was.
Okay. Well, I'm going to put you on the spot because
Okay.
young people, the most common question I get asked by my members, and actually not even so much my members, but people who are early in their accounting finance career, CPA or MBA, which is the better credential for being a CFO?
So I would definitely say get both if you can. And I think in a lot of the states now, in order to get your CPA, you have to do the extra 30 hours or so. So you might as well get the extra couple classes and get the MBA. I do think, though, if you had to pick one, I do think that the MBA is probably the better one to get, but would strongly suggest you get both because here's the reason. And I don't know if this is what you're thinking I'm going to say, but you're going to have a lot of advisors, a lot of auditors coming in and your chief accounting officer, and, they're going to give you the most conservative treatment every time. And you want to be able to push back and say, okay, but I'm looking at this business outcome. So how do I get there? And if you don't have the accounting chops to push back in those situations, because you just don't know, it kind of, it's an advantage that you can't press.
Okay, interesting. So, yeah, getting both. I mean, both of us did that differently.
Yeah.
I worked like 5 or 7 years before going back, and you did it immediately. So, but yeah, I mean, to me, any credential is a good credential, right? And it shows your commitment to your craft and your intellectual curiosity, and these are things that employers value. But anyways, so you left public accounting and you joined Citrix, which, since you lasted 17 years, seemed like that was probably a pretty good move on your part. But
Yes.
tell us a little about, what you learned at Citrix, maybe, lessons learned, maybe some of the challenges that you were faced with over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Citrix was a great run. It was a company that when I started there, I think it was maybe around 300 million or so in revenue. We scaled that up to 3.3 billion and then spun 20% of it off and then scaled it back up to 3 billion again. So, and countless acquisitions. I want to say 60 plus acquisitions over my tenure. There were periods more intensely acquisitive than others, but lots of acquisitions. And from my perspective, I like to fix things and I like to problem solve. Like those are the things that get me excited. So, I got the opportunity to do a lot of the work around scaling the organization, which presents a lot of challenges, but it also presents a lot of opportunities for growth and learning. So one of the biggest projects I took on, and I started doing this when we were over $1 billion company, was moving to a shared services model. And it was one of those things where, okay, we have we're in 40 countries and I have 40 controllers and everybody's doing everything fine. They're getting the bills paid, getting the people paid, collecting the cash, but we want to automate it. So now it's like I got, 40 people from 40 countries trying to agree on one process, to automate it, because you can't automate it 40 different ways. And that was just when I was like, okay, this is not going to work. We cannot do a distributed model. So we started organizing by function. Every function had one leader. And then we, had one decision maker, and we kind of looked at all the different processes, took the best of all those processes. And we were able to have we're going to reconcile one way. We're going to, pay the bills this way. We're going to do everything one way. Each person's breadth was reduced, but their depth was increased. And, we reorganized and we saved a couple $100 million doing that. And I was able to take a big chunk of that money and put that into building a procurement organization, because back in those days we were truly an on-prem model, and your margins are fantastic, right? I mean, you're basically selling maybe a disc, maybe eventually you're delivering a key, so you don't really have cost of goods sold. You do for the services and things like that, but the margins are fantastic in that model, which we've moved away in favor of SaaS models. And cost discipline was not one of the things that was a key focus item. But as we started to grow and move into the SaaS environment, the margins of the business started to change. So it became really important for us to start monitoring everything we were buying. So I took some of the savings that I got from reorganizing the entire back office into the COE and built out a procurement organization that actually saved a couple $100 million more. So that was a project that kept on giving.
Yeah, it's interesting because, particularly I've observed with tech, and I worked in tech companies, but none that were even close to as big as Citrix. Often cost management, cost discipline, whatever phrase we put to it, it's an afterthought. And the financial people, to them, they don't want to kill sort of the entrepreneurial spirit that people just go out and get stuff done and the company grows. On the other hand, you can't really ignore it, right? So how do you balance that a little bit, right? You don't want to change the culture, but it's your job to bring discipline to certain processes.
100%. So the first thing is, really growing profitably, I think is super important. I think we've seen it recently with all the big layoffs in some of the big tech companies. I think the days of, getting giant valuations on companies that are losing money like crazy, but show big top line growth is probably over for now, especially as the cost of capital's increased. So how do you do it without killing the culture? So I always take a consultative approach. I really focus less on what they're asking for and turn the question into what are you trying to achieve? What's the outcome? You know, a lot of times folks will come and say, I need 10 more people to do this, or I need, $3 million to get a system for this, or I'm going to be out of compliance with my product if I don't have this. Like, and then, I try to step away from that ask and not get caught up in the emotional aspect of the ask and say, okay, well, why don't you tell me a little bit about what you're trying to achieve, what outcome you're trying to get? And then, if I know, which I probably do, that I don't have budget hanging around to get 20 people for XYZ's project, then it's like, okay, well, let's think about how we can do this. And then, we can have a conversation about the business outcome. Who else needs to be involved? Did they even think about a business case? What is the company going to yield out of this? Is it going to save costs? Is it going to increase revenue? Is it going to reduce risk? And, all of those types of things. So I found, you could be the CFO and just be like, no, absolutely not. And you can alienate everybody, or you can learn a lot about the business and what's going on in the business, by taking those requests and starting to just ask some basic questions.
Did you say CF no?
Yes.
I can't prove it, but I believe that I invented that phrase in 1984.
You might have. I heard it on a commercial, I think.
Yeah, and when I started public speaking, I started sharing the story, and it's since has taken off. And I know that's just a coincidence, but
Yeah.
I had a boss who just said no to everything. No,
Yeah.
no, no. And I was an intern. I was like 19, 20 years old, something like that. And anything, no matter what you asked, was always no. Even things like, changing the brand of coffees or he was just genetically programmed to say no. So I started calling the guy the CF no behind his back. And then one day he calls me in and he says, he always called people by their last names, like McCullough. I understand you've been calling me the CF no. And I'm like, I'm thinking, oh, geez, my career's over. My parents are going to kill me. I'm going to lose this job and my future. And he said, I just want you to know it's the finest compliment I've ever received in my career. You're going to go far, kid. And I just like, what the heck? And then I come to find out later, he was spelling no, K-N-O-W. And he thought the moniker was a tribute to his extraordinary knowledge. And, I, of course, had to let him think that.
Sounds like he had a lot of issues.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't a bad guy. He was just, well, I was going to say he was an older guy, but he's far younger than I am today. So funny how that can happen. So, but cool.
I had another boss that never said no. He never said anything.
Really?
Yeah. And that was something that, I struggled with. I was he was the CFO at one point and, head of finance. And I'd worked with him for a while. I was always his number 2 in command. And people would leave conversations and be like, oh yeah, he said I could have this. And, because he never, ever said no, but he never, ever, ever said yes.
That's interesting. Yeah. There are some cultures that they don't want to embarrass you. And I don't want to say which one. We live in sensitive times, but I remember we did a proposal and the guy replied, something to the effect of, your proposal is very intriguing and we're excited by the potential partnership. We later found out that was a no. It's like, well, what do you mean? He said he was excited for the partnership. He just didn't want to embarrass you. I'm like, well, he kind of did when I went back to everybody and told them we were full steam ahead, but everything's context there. So, but anyway, I want to ask you, you moved to Kaseya after, the run of a lifetime, and you joined Kaseya in May of 2021. Dumb question because it's a wonderful company, but what was it about the opportunity that you found compelling?
Yeah, this is a super easy question to answer. I met Fred, who's our CEO, and he had such clarity of vision and purpose for the company that literally I was on the phone with him for an hour or so. And, I'd been interviewing with a lot of companies and I got off the phone and my husband says, oh, well, what do they do? And, in that short conversation, I was able to clearly articulate exactly what they did and what the vision was. And I think that is so important to know, what your purpose is, who your customer is, and be really laser focused on it. I think too many companies try to be too many things to too many people or customers that they lose focus. And it was that clarity of vision that I was like, I think that out of all the different opportunities I was looking at, I said, I think I want to go there, because I think that that's like more than half the battle of really knowing who and what you are and what you're serving and what your purpose is. And Fred definitely has that in spades.
Yeah, so this is Fred Bocola, if I'm saying that correctly.
Fred Vicola.
Bocola, thank you.
Yeah, he's our CEO.
Yeah, you actually told me before this conversation too. Shame on me. But anyway, so I actually am always curious to explore that dynamic, because like some people have said, CFOs are almost like a deputy CEO. And there's a lot of research that suggests it's the most important relationship among the C-suite. So how would you describe your professional relationship with Fred?
Oh yeah, Fred and I get along really well. We talk a lot, and it's very consultative. Fred's a visionary, and my job is to work with the leadership team and really figure out ways to make the things that he envisions reality. We definitely, as a company, have a lot of financial discipline. We do grow profitably. I think too many companies allow profitability to get away. And I do a lot of talks for folks that are thinking about selling their businesses. And, I always tell people, once profitability gets away from you, it's super hard to get it back. On the flip side, you can always spend more. That's the easy part, right? So, that's kind of our philosophy of growing the company. So we're always thoughtful about that. He's very focused on profit and EBITDA. So that makes it easier. And then, as our management team, I do consider myself as a business partner to the entire management team. So mostly our president, our chief product officer, our chief marketing officer, and a couple of others. So, I try to take that consultative approach with my peers as well as with Fred.
That's it. A healthy relationship, to say the least. So, yeah, it's remarkable how many CFOs tell me that they join the company largely because of the person in charge. Just that relationship. The excitement for their vision and just the chance to build something great with the right person. So, but I want to talk to you a little bit about the company. And they were established before you joined, I realized, but you've had the opportunity to nurture and create a team. And sort of, what's your philosophy to building a world-class finance and accounting team in the modern environment?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we really like to do at Kaseya, and it aligns very much with how I've always thought about it, is we like to grow our own. So what does that mean? That means that we like to take candidates that are less experienced and provide them training and the support system so they can grow into roles. Also, we like to promote from within. It's a really, really big cultural aspect of our business. Of course, there's some roles where, especially in my groups, where I need experienced folks. But a lot of times when I'm looking for like somebody like maybe a chief accounting officer, or I'm looking for a head of finance, I'll want to hire what I call a step up candidate, that person that is right below the role I'm looking to hire at their current company. And maybe that person is ready to be promoted, but their current company, the guy in the seat isn't leaving anytime soon. There's not a business need for a promotion. And, I look for those types of folks to hire into the org. And what I find is that they're still close enough to whatever it was they were doing, that they know how to do it, and then I give them an opportunity to manage it as well, depending on the level of the role. So that's something that we really focus on, is like giving people that chance to be a first-time chief accounting officer, or a first-time head of HR, a first-time legal person, the person that was right below that person at their other company. So that's something, we take pride in. Of course, sometimes we'll hire, a seasoned person that already sat in the seat, depending on what it is. But in general, we have that kind of scrappy culture where we want those people that are willing to fight to get to the next level. And, it builds that tenacity throughout the team. The other thing that I look for in team members is boundaryless behavior. I can't tell you how many times I sit in an interview and the person, you always have the obligatory, you have any questions for me at the end? And they're like, well, what are the top 5 things you need from me? Or what would you call success in my first 90 days or whatever? And I always answer that like, look, I know what the top 5 things I need from this role is. That's in the job description. The value is going to become when you tell me about the 20 things I didn't know I needed and you're going to fix for me or jump in and work on, those are the things that have the value. And, when somebody in my team, is like, look, this is broken over here. Nobody seems to own it, or, so-and-so won't do it. I have that philosophy of, okay, well, you don't have to just color in the lines of your job description. Let's go fix that problem.
Interesting. And I know on the debate of work from home versus back to the office, you've made the commitment to have everybody back at the office for a lot of reasons. Is that my understanding correct?
Yes, you're very correct. And it actually, flies right into the face of how we think about hiring. So if you're going to hire folks that are going to step up into their role, or you're going to give people their first time opportunity to be a manager, to be a seller, you're going to grow your own. I think the growing and learning is much more accelerated when people are in the office together. Our sales floor is purpose built to keep early career sellers going and allow them to quickly move up in their career. So, we actually set up the physical space where there's a manager that sits at the head of the table, and the 8 reps they supervise sit along the table. And that manager's there for when they need help, they can raise their hand or call them over. We also have other supporting characters that are going around the floors. Like, for example, our IT Complete platform has over 40 modules in it. And, one seller is never going to be an expert in all 40 modules. So if they're on the phone with a customer that needs some additional information to close that sale, we have product specialists or customer success engineers or solution engineers that are literally co-located with them, and they can call them over and get help. And, sometimes, they'll be like, well, why do I have to be here? And I'm like, well, if you weren't here, and you had to hang up the phone and you have that customer on the line to go find somebody on a Zoom or a Teams or a cell phone to answer a question, when you could have just like kind of called the person over, that makes a one sale, one call sale, a 2 call sale. And who knows if the guy's going to pick up the phone, again. So, we try to not only tell people like you have to be in the office, but we give them the why it makes sense. Why does it help their career? Why does it help them, achieve their objective? In the case I just gave, that would be to sell more because they're sellers and they're paid on commission. So, that's kind of why we like the in the office culture. And I think it fits in with what we try to do from a people perspective in growing our own and promoting from within.
Interesting, because I've asked that question a few times on this podcast and just other places. I think you just made the most compelling argument that I've heard since I've been asking the question around. So cool.
Awesome.
but I want to chat a little about your you're a very powerful company within your industry, but you also have a lot of formidable competition. So that must be a constant challenge, for any company that works in an industry like that. But how do you continue to be the market leader in your space and fend off all the companies that would like to be you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're competitively positioned very well. IT Complete, our platform is complete. I don't think any other vendor has a platform that can compete with ours from a completeness perspective. And then, we solve basic problems for our customers. One is vendor fatigue. So, you could get a lot of different point solutions from 15, 16, 17 different vendors. But if you're a small business, you probably don't have a procurement department like I have to manage all those vendor relationships. We don't have to make all of our money on one item or 2 items. We have 40 things to sell you. So we're willing to sell at a lower price to get more of your wallet share so we can compete on price as well. Those are 2 of the bigger things we do to compete.
Interesting. So I have to ask you one question. It's a little off subject, but I'm a Boston Celtics fan.
Okay.
Born and raised in New England. And last year I noticed at some point along the stadium became the Kaseya Center. And you are now the host of the Miami Heat. And just fascinated by, what went into that decision. Because if I have my facts right, it was a $117 million decision. And, so how do you kind of make the decision to sponsor a sports stadium like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, for us, we are hiring at an accelerated rate. And I think we saw it as an opportunity to get our name out there and help with recruiting. We saw an extremely large increase in traffic to our website and influx of resumes when we did the deal, and it continues on. Also, for our customers, their customers to have name recognition. I actually met with a customer yesterday in our Miami office, and he's like, now when I go pitch to my dentist, I say, I have Graphis, the email software powered by Kaseya. And, I think this guy said he was from, where was he from? He was from Wisconsin or somewhere. And he was like, and they know what it is because, you guys have the stadium. So it gives that name recognition. Also, Miami is our home turf. And when the FTX guys went belly up, it was just an opportunity that presented itself. In addition to helping with recruiting and name recognition, and also allows us, when we bring people to our headquarters, our customers to our headquarters, take them to a game and give them an experience that they may never had as a small business.
Okay,
So
cool.
for example, if you're a big enterprise and you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with companies, you're going to get a lot of perks. A lot of our customers, they're small businesses. Maybe they spend $10,000 with us, and we'll take them to a game when they come down to visit. So there's just so many reasons why we did it. And then finally, a chunk of that money goes to a program called Peace and Prosperity, which is a local program for Miami-Dade County to end gun violence in the streets. So there's that piece of it too. So it's a multifaceted deal with a lot of reasons to do it.
No, it's wonderful to work for a company that's able to make that type of impact. And after the episode, I'm going to share Kathy's email on our blog. So if anyone wants free passes to an upcoming Miami Heat game, you just reach out to her and she can make it happen for you. Just in case anyone's not clear, I am kidding about that. So super. Well, since you've been at Kaseya, have you done a lot of acquisitions? Because you mentioned you've done a lot at Citrix.
No, we've done a lot of acquisitions at Kaseya. Obviously, the most notable one is Datto. We had the opportunity to buy our biggest competitor and take a public company private. So that was a super exciting acquisition, transformational acquisition to work on. And then we've done a lot of smaller ones. Most recently, we bought a company called Vanahai. That one I love. We did it almost a year ago now. It was last April, and it's automation of pen testing, and it's really sits very well in how we think about M&A, because our customers are small businesses and labor is a problem. Labor is expensive, especially nowadays, and automating and pen tests are expensive and they're labor intensive. So this was an opportunity to buy a company who had automated that to make something accessible to our customer base, in this case, network penetration testing, that might have not been accessible to small businesses at all because of the barrier of entry of cost and labor intensivity. So we look at those types of acquisitions to add into our IT complete stack to make it more complete. And Vanahai was one that really fit well into how we think about it.
Interesting. So I've always heard, and I've been acquired, but I've never done the acquiring in my career, that the one thing that's underrated about an acquisition is the cultural aspect. And here you are, buying your biggest competitor, right? So what's your experience? Is that a fair statement that the cultural thing is as difficult as the other aspects? And what have you learned from that?
Absolutely. I think that, I always say culture it has to be a part of a deal. When we look at our acquisitions, we really like to keep the leaders or the founders of those acquisitions as part of our management team. Those intellectual assets, especially in software, make a lot of sense to retain, but we also want to find folks that are going to be able to, work within our company and be a cultural fit. And, some of the things I always consider is like, what's their customer service orientation? Things aren't good or bad, but they're different. And if you can't agree on like what customer service looks like and your customer centricity, and, if you had $1, you would spend it on another, bell and whistle on a product that maybe 1% of the customers are going to use, or spend it on an account manager that's the frontline decision maker that's servicing your customer. If you have those fundamental disagreements, it's going to be really hard to come together cohesively and make your acquisition successful. So, those are some of the things we look at, is to make sure folks are going to be a cultural fit. We're very upfront about what it's like to work at Kaseya, what the expectations are. Make sure that the folks that we're acquiring understand that. And, the other thing we do is we keep the brand names of the companies we acquire. There's so many companies that, acquire a company and then they immediately get rid of the top people and, change the name. And it's like, oh my God, you just paid for all that. It's like, buying a car and changing out the engine or taking the front seat out right away. It's like you just devalued that asset by stripping it down, and you just paid all that money for it. Like you haven't even gotten it off the lot yet. And, it may not be worth as much as what you bought. So we definitely approach it that way. We look at the culture. We make sure that the companies that we're going to acquire not only have a technology fit, but they also have a cultural fit. And then we bring them in. We try to create the environment to let the entrepreneurs that we're acquiring still be entrepreneurial while working within the bigger company. And then, of course, we keep the names of the companies we acquire. Sometimes they say powered by Kaseya, or by Kaseya, and go from there. And it's been a very successful way of doing these things.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Like if you can, buy an entrepreneurial company, in some ways it's the best of all worlds, because they can keep that entrepreneurial spirit and their, philosophy and everything's done. But also, it's financial stability, right? I've worked in startups, and it's distracting when you don't know if you're going to have enough money in the bank for payroll 60 days out. So if that's a given, then you can just focus on, solving your technological problem. But I wanted to chat, when we spoke before, you mentioned the 3 Ps: planning, predicting, and profits. I'd love to, dive into that a little bit, get your philosophy on how the 3 Ps make you a more effective leader.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we always say we need to plan for everything. And then, predicting is even more difficult, because everything changes very quickly in technology and business, and especially here at Kaseya. We're a very dynamic company growing quickly, and like an opportunity like the Kaseya Center, pops up, and it's like, that's a big deal, and let's figure out how we're going to be able to do that. Can we do it? Can we afford it? How do we negotiate it? Find time to do it? What else is going to wait while we're going off and doing that? Like, so you have to predict as much as you can, and try to build time and resources into the system, where if an opportunity presents itself, you're going to be able to grab that. And then, of course, we talked about profitability. I mean, growing profitable is very important, and it's one of the things where we're always looking at our profitability margin and making those tweaks, where it's like, unfettered growth without profitability is not going to make us a more valuable company, and it's not a good way to run. So, when folks, we talked about like hiring, we were hiring a lot of people. And when you look at Kaseya's history, you're not going to find those big layoffs that you find at so many other tech companies, because they got over exuberant, hired too many people, and then they're laying off like, oops, we hired 1,000 too many people, and then they have layoffs. And, I think as people are evaluating companies that they want to work for, that's something they should really look at.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That makes sense. So cool. One of my favorite parts of this, I like to ask our guests for a fun fact or something about them that people might find surprising. So, Kathy Wagner, what's your fun fact?
Yeah, so I am a total motorhead. I absolutely love cars. My husband and I love fast cars, old cars. We like to build monster trucks in our driveway. One time we built a monster truck, and literally my husband had a crane deliver it to the house and drop this giant Lincoln big block engine into this big F-250 truck that he had jacked up, where I needed a ladder to get into it. And he painted it in his buddy's paint booth. He had a shop. So, everything from, building these crazy cars to, just having, like, we have like a Z06 Corvette. I have a AMG Benz. We like, the go fast stuff. And then his latest purchase is a giant jacked up Jeep Rubicon. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, we just love cars, and we love that kind of stuff.
When you say you built them, you're not speaking metaphorically. You actually.
No, no, no. Yeah, it was mostly him. I mean, I'm very supportive of it secretly. Like, I'll be like, oh, why are you buying that? But secretly, I'm like, oh my God, that's so awesome. He's getting that.
Yeah, and I can
I love
imagine
it too.
your neighbors must have been thrilled to see a crane delivered.
Yeah, we had to move from there. It was funny. When we first came to Florida, we lived on a country club that his parents had a home there, and the monster truck, they made us park it by the dumpster behind the clubhouse
So,
where nobody could see it. And we used to take our golf cart down to be able to drive the truck out. And eventually one of the security guards there actually bought that truck. So yeah, some of it's just super fun. It's like, not all of it's highbrow and expensive, but just like, really fun builds that we enjoy for a while, and then we sell them and, move on to something new.
yeah, no, I mentioned I live in Massachusetts, and it's very rare that monster trucks come up here. We're perhaps just not their audience. And but I did get dragged going to one a few years ago against my will, and I have to say it was just more fun than I imagined. I won't say I was dreading it, but I was like, how the heck do I get out of this? Should I, pretend to be sick or something? But it was amazing to watch. And, I just my perception of what it actually was a little bit different. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, for some reason, it's not really caught on in New England very much. Was it in New Jersey in your youth, or is
No,
this something you picked up in Florida?
actually, I'm trying to think. He built it in New Jersey, and we moved it down to Florida with us. So I think that was like the time frame. It was funny when we got married. My gift was he bought me a Cobra with a stick shift, and it was like the first year they had the 4.6 liter engine, like with the overhead cam, so they were pumping more air into a smaller engine at the time, Ford. But I had a black GT Mustang, and he bought me this white Cobra. So I used to switch them out when I drove to work, and I was working at Anderson at the time, and people were always like, did you just paint your car? Because like they looked similar enough. They're like, wasn't your car black yesterday? And I'd be like, yeah, we painted it white. And then the next day we'd come in and have a white one, and people are like, what are you doing with this car? But that was my wedding present. It had a racing clutch in it. I used to get to work and like my leg would buckle. It would be so tired from that stiff clutch. So
Oh, I bet. Yeah. So you like messing with people then, it sounds like, huh?
yeah, why not?
Hey.
Life's too short, right? You gotta have a little fun.
Oh, yeah, it's one of the few joys I have in life at this point. So cool. Anyway, I want to conclude this. You've had a fantastic career, and I want to get any advice you can give to the next generation of financial leaders.
Absolutely. This is advice I always give people. You know what? I think the best thing you can do is when you come into a role, number one is like people are like, how can I get promoted? I'm like, well, the very first thing I want you to do is kill the role you got. Number two, identify problems and solve them. And number three, don't say no to anything. If somebody asks you to do something, turn it into, an opportunity to really make an impression. I think if you do those things, you like you said it before, intellectual curiosity, that will give you a good foundation to get promoted and eventually become a leader.
Fantastic. So, Kathy, this was a lot of fun, and I'm sure really informative for the listeners. So I know you get a lot going on, so thank you for making the time to be available. And I'd love to give you the final word if you have one.
No, just thanks, Jack, for having me. Like I said, I really enjoyed the conversation, and it was great getting the opportunity to do this podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode. To continue your exploration of this role that focuses on strategy, leadership, finance, and technology, listen to more episodes of the show at rockstarcfos.com. Join this revolution, episode by episode. Push yourself to achieve great things and unlock the best opportunities available to you. CFOs are creating a legacy, and it's time for you to leave your own unique imprint on the world today. That's all for now. See you on the next one.